Let's jump right in. Today, we're doing a deep dive, an explainer, really, into the fascinating biological connection between your child's fear and your emotional bond with them. We're going to look at the intersection of two incredibly powerful forces in human development, the instinct to be afraid and the instinct to be connected. As parents or caregivers, wrapping your head around this dynamic is honestly like being handed the source code for your child's emotional resilience.
So picture this, you're walking down the street and out of nowhere a massive dog starts barking aggressively. Your toddler? They instantly cling to your leg for dear life. We've all been there, right? But what happens next in that interaction isn't just about calming them down in the moment. According to decades of psychological research, the way you respond literally wires their nervous system. It shapes how their brain processes fear, calculates danger, and learns to cope with the world moving forward.
Quick look at our roadmap for this explainer. We're covering fear and the attachment system, the secure base concept, what happens when fear becomes dysregulated, attachment and therapy, and finally, building a secure attachment.
Okay, let's start with part 1, fear and the attachment system.
Psychiatrist John Bowlby, basically the father of modern attachment theory, described this system a lot like a thermostat. You know how a thermostat kicks the heat on when your house gets too cold? Well, when a child feels alarm, pain, or danger, their attachment drive automatically kicks on to seek safety. This isn't some learned behavior, it's a primal evolutionary survival mechanism. In our ancient past, a baby wandering away from a caregiver was in mortal danger, so fear and the instinct to run to you are permanently intertwined in the human brain.
And fear is absolutely a normal, evolving part of growing up. Just look at how these triggers change over time. Between ages 0 and 2, it's all sensory stuff, loud noises, being physically separated from you. Then by ages 3 and 4, their imagination just explodes, right? Hello, monsters under the bed and being afraid of the dark. Then, as they hit adolescence and start thinking more abstractly, their fears shift heavily towards social evaluation and peer rejection. So fear isn't a flaw, it's a completely normal developmental milestone.
Moving right along to section 2, the secure base concept. As a parent, you actually serve two incredibly crucial roles in attachment theory. First, you're the safe haven. When that dog barks, they retreat to you for immediate protection and comfort. But once they're calmed down, you transition into the secure base. You become the solid ground from which they can step back out into the world, investigate, and learn. You simply cannot have brave exploration without that solid foundation to fall back on.
Bowlby's groundbreaking research really nailed this down. He found that securely attached children are literally braver explorers. Why? Because they know, without a doubt, that their secure base will be there if things go sideways. It completely flips our idea of independence on its head. We often think independence means pushing a kid away to figure it out on their own. But science shows the exact opposite. Kids who are confident their parents are reliably available are actually the ones most willing to take risks and master their environment.
Let's transition to section 3. When fear becomes dysregulated.
Now this is where things get really interesting. Research shows that about 10% of toddlers exhibit what we call dysregulated fear. This isn't your average spook. It's highly intense, it often doesn't match the situation, and it's incredibly hard to soothe. While normal fears fade when the threat is gone, dysregulated fear sticks around. And developmental studies tracking these kids into adolescence show that this specific inability to regulate fear is exactly what creates a really high risk for later anxiety disorders.
And all of this builds into their psychology through something called an internal working model. Think of it like the blueprint the child builds for how the world works. If care is consistent, they build a secure model. I am safe, I can trust others. But if care is inconsistent or rejecting, they develop insecure models. They either become hypervigilant or they just suppress everything. And to put some hard numbers to it, science shows a moderate correlation, an R value of 0.30, between insecure attachment in early childhood and clinical anxiety later in life. That's a huge deal.
When that caregiving environment is inconsistent, the child's fear just stays dysregulated. And honestly, it completely drains their internal bandwidth. An insecurely attached child gets so caught up in either trying to get erratic attention from their caregiver or protecting themselves from rejection that they literally don't have the energy left to explore, play, or learn. The fear system completely overrides the exploration system.
Okay, section 4, attachment, exposure, and therapy.
So how do psychologists actually treat this? Well, cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, is the gold standard for childhood anxiety, and it works in 3 steps. First is psychoeducation, teaching kids that anxiety is mostly just a false alarm in the brain. Then, cognitive restructuring, to challenge those catastrophic thoughts. But the real heavy lifting happens in step 3, exposure. This is where they gradually confront the very thing they're terrified of, allowing their brain to naturally realize it's not actually dangerous.
But here is the absolute crux of the matter. A child can only successfully face their fears in exposure therapy if they have the profound safety of a secure attachment to return to. Think about it. We're asking a child to willingly walk toward the exact thing their brain is screaming at them to run away from. That takes massive courage. And where does that courage come from? It comes straight from having a secure base. The success of therapy is deeply tied to the parent's ability to be that steady anchor. Bringing us to our final section, Part 5, Building a Secure Attachment.
This part is so incredibly empowering for you as a parent. Your emotional bond is literally a biological shield. A massive study of over 100 adolescents found that while adverse childhood experiences typically lead to anxiety and emotion regulation issues, a strong, secure attachment to a mother or a father actually disrupted that chain. Your relationship physically changes the biological trajectory of how stress impacts your child's developing brain. It's like giving them a suit of armor.
So what's in your everyday toolkit to build this? First, responsive co-regulation. When they're terrified, hold them. Use your own calm nervous system to physically soothe theirs. Next, don't avoid the scary things, but introduce them to gradual exposure with you right by their side. Keep their routines predictable to minimize the unknown. And lastly, validate those emotions. Instead of saying, "Oh, there's nothing to be afraid of," try saying, "I see you're scared, and I am right here with you."
So, I'll leave you with this question to chew on. How will you serve as the secure base for your child's next big adventure? Because every single time you validate their fear and offer that calm, steady presence, you aren't just getting through a meltdown at the grocery store or a nightmare at 2 a.m. You are literally constructing their blueprint of the world. You are teaching them that yes, the world can absolutely be scary, but they are safe, they are loved, and they are fully capable of facing it.